Well,
All right, so we're going to do a little review of the wheel itself, the electric wheel, the basic tools, and then how to get started with attaching sort of your ball of clay to the bat and then beginning to center and go from there. First thing you need to know about the wheel is that it's got a foot pedal, it's a rheostat, it acts like the accelerator in a car. We have a power switch, power on indicates green light, means on. We have two directions with this wheel. In this case, it's switch forward. We'll run it counterclockwise. If you pull the switch back, it's actually got two positions. There's a neutral in the middle, which means nothing. You pull it back, then the wheel will travel in a clockwise direction. I'm right-handed, so I like it to run counterclockwise. If you were left-handed, you could switch it to clockwise. That's probably would work better for you. I have some basic tools out again. You're going to need a bucket of water. You're going to need a trimming tool like this. You need a sponge. You're going to need, I like this wooden tool. It's been sharpened. It acts as a great cutting tool. You're going to need a pin tool. I got a pin tool here. And I like to have this rib, this wood one especially. It's good for cleaning the bat, etc. And you're going to need a wire cutter. And this will cut our pots off at the end. All right. So first things first, I've got my ball of clay, approximately a pound, about the size of a baseball. I like to make sure I always have a dry bat. Now these bats are removable. We have an aluminum wheel head that's got these pins. Be really careful. If you hit your fingers on these pins while it's spinning, it will hurt. The bat, as you can see, has got holes. They die right into the pins. What's nice about that is that this system is totally removable. You can pick up your bat and store it and take your pot off a day later or so. You always want to have a dry bat. And I like to recommend using just a towel. You can work from the center out. Just dry that off. I also want to point out that the wheel itself is formatted much like a clock. In fact, we've written 12, 6, 3, and 9 o'clock on the wheel head here. Or on the basin. And what's really important is you'll hear me refer to tool from this position, i.e. from 4 o'clock or whatnot. And I'll refer to the points on the wheel while I'm working. At any rate, dry bat, dry ball. Want to make sure it's in this ball form. Make sure you wedged well. First move is right on the middle there. Pat, pat, pat a little bit. Okay? Obviously not centered, but this is where this next step comes in. I'm going to use my hands in kind of a clapping motion where I'm forming a V, sort of like a tent, but I'm going to pat, 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 pat. Notice the speed I'm going really slow. So this pedal is either any speed you want in between 0 and 100, but I like it at about 3 there, so to speak. And I pat, 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 patting, and notice I'm using these portions of my palm. You can see the moisture. You'll notice also that I use all the parts of my hand and fingers in tandem to work together. So still not centered, but what's more important is that it's glued down. The foot is now glued to the bat. It's in a general sort of mound form. And once I have that established, then I can get some moisture involved. Now water is key, but more importantly, the slip on your hands is key. You want to maintain a slick on the clay at all times. So now I'm going to begin to surround the clay to get it so I can center it. And predominantly what I'm going to use is this portion of my hand. You'll notice my hands are always going to surround the clay, but most importantly what's going to go on, because I'm right-handed, is I'm going to use this right hand, sort of my elbow propped inside my inner thigh. I'm going to act like a backstop, so to speak. And I'm going to tell the clay, hey, you need to get into position based upon where this hand is. A lot of people just think, oh, you just surround the clay with your hands and magically it gets into center. No. You need to tell it with your hands, get in the center. You need to physically tell it. Now, I'm approaching from approximately about 4:30 here. And I'm forcing my arm towards 11 here. So the force is traveling in that general direction. Now, I'm not forcing terribly hard, but I am being firm. I'm telling it like, I'm staying here. You, the clay, are moving to where I want you to go. Okay, notice this left hand. I call kind of the guard. He's always doing something to tell the clay, yeah, you don't need to step out of line. You need to stay in alignment. So, in any rate, this is the boss, this is the guard, so to speak. and the clay is the prisoner, or I don't know, whoever you want to do the work. At any rate, so I'm being firm, I'm compressing down. Notice I'm building up a little slip there. That tells me that I'm making that clay move past my hands. Slip is another good indicator because it tells me there's enough lubricity on the clay. You never want to see this clay like look dry. If it looks dry, it's probably going to grip your palms and such. And gripping is bad because you'll never get it centered if there's gripping going on. At any rate, generalized sort of mound form, pretty well centered. You can see it spins pretty well. There's a lot of clay here on the foot. I want to trim that off. Now I'm going to approach from 3 o'clock over here with this trimming tool. 2 hands on the tool. I'm resting my hands on the rim here at about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I'm going to spin first and approach from the side of 3 and trim that material off. Okay? Always 2 hands on the tool. That way you assure that it's not jumping around. Again, I'm right-handed. That approach is from 3. If you were left-handed and traveling in a clockwise direction, you'd be approaching from 9. So at any rate, I'm showing you a lot of right-handed techniques. Just think in terms of the opposite if you're left-handed. Okay. So notice my hands are not hopping around and the clay is spinning centrally there. It's not hopping. I mean, this is out of center. If it's wonky like that, it's out of center. All right, notice I'm not using tons of water, but I'm maintaining lubricity on my palms there and on the clay. All right, so we're returning close to center there. All right. So my first move, once I get it centered, is I want to sort of flat it. Now, as a practice, I think it's a good idea to move your clay through a series of up and down positions, because what I want to do is add sort of mobility to the clay, warm it up, so to speak, and then prepare it so that when I go to draw my walls, the clay is in a really plastic and fluid sort of state. So I basically took my thumbs there, I surrounded the clay with my fingertips, and I flatted it. Okay. At any rate, it being centered, it did move around a lot. Now I'm going to bring it up into a mound. And again, now I'm using these portions of my hand, surrounding it though entirely, and I'm squeezing. This is the part that sort of baffles people, is you need to physically squeeze the clay at times. You need to be physical with it to move it. So I brought it up into this mound. I'm going to bring it flat again. Take it down. Notice I can increase my speed. When the clay is centered, I can, with assurance, I can speed it up. Okay? But speed comes with confidence and experience. I would always advocate slower speeds to get used to it, then you can increase your speed. So I brought it up to this mound again. It's basically centered. My next move is this. I'm going to flat it a little bit with my thumb tips there, always surrounding with the guard. At any rate, I've got a flat here. Notice this good slip on my fingertips. That's what you want to see always. Now, I'm taking my right thumb, I'm depressing it into the center. Notice I'm always maintaining a guard sort of around with my fingertips there. And now I'm going to put a little water in the swimming pool. That's going to add lubricity. And now I'm going to take my right thumb, and my left thumb is going to, in essence, die into the nail there, and I'm going to push them together straight down in a mechanical fashion. I'm not going all the way to the bottom, but I'm going about 3/4 of the way down. So if I'm going to make a little bowl or a little cylinder, that's how you would start. You never want to drill a hole in the clay unless it's centered. Don't drill a hole until you know it's centered. Okay? Notice it. You know it's centered when you see it spin and it's, in essence, staying, I don't know, it's right orbit. I don't know how to explain that. Anyway, so I've gone to the bottom. I'm now operating up here at 12 o'clock. Thumbs inside, and I'm using these, sort of my index and the center finger. I'm going to act as like lobster claws. I'm going to pinch, so to speak. And I'm going to pinch a little bit of clay. I'm going to grab and create a little mound here on the side. And then I'm methodically going to move that mound up the wall and, in essence, elevate and thin the wall, creating a cylinder. Okay, that was one pass. I want you to begin to think in terms of that as you're building things on the wheel, you're doing them in a series of passes. Nothing happens in one shot, okay? But methodically, you thin the wall by grabbing a portion of clay, creating that little ridge. Again up here, using both hands, And notice I'm using the revolutions of the wheel to draw that clay up, elevating the wall and thinning at the same time. Okay, I'm never thinning more than, say, at most 1/8 of an inch with a size of clay this big. But as you can see, the cylinder grows. Now I've gotten to a point where I'm no longer going to be able to lobster claw that. I'm going to have to begin to work with one hand inside and one on the outside. Now this finger here, I can push that clay in and simultaneously be using this finger, and though you can't see it, these two fingers are working together, moving up the clay, up the wall there. So I'm creating that ridge, and now I'm going to bring that ridge up, and I'm going to elevate my wall, elevating my cylinder. Okay, so this is kind of a nice cylindrical tumbler form. The last kind of couple things I can do on this, I can even out that wall. Okay. Now I'm running into some issues of lubricity, so I need more moisture because it's gripping my fingers. If you're ever feeling gripping, you want more moisture, and I'm having the same thing happen there again. Some people can hold a sponge while they're doing this. I haven't figured that one out. But at any rate. So we have a nice tumbler here. I can soften this lip. See how I'm using my fingers in this little crissy-crossy pattern? I can soften that lip, putting a radius on it. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is how to trim down here. I've got this trimming tool. That blade I want to project through like a bird beak, like that. I'm coming from 3 o'clock, and I'm going to project it down, count the revolutions, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Took about 7 or 8 revolutions. I was spinning the wheel at approximately, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10 at about 3 or 4. I can take that 0.2, I'm now at about 4 o'clock or 4:30. I can take and scrape. I can take and turn the blade, holding 2 hands again, coming from about 4:30, and I can scrape. Taking off excess. At this point, what's important is if there's water inside the piece, I want to get that water out with a dry sponge. I can sponge the interior of the pot. When I'm sponging interiors, I'm always thinking in terms of being on the side of number 3. If I try and sponge on this side, I'm sort of working against the wheel, so I always want to be working and doing all tooling in this quadrant between, say, 3 and 6. So I've gotten my moisture out of there. I can roll that lip. I can take it up the wall there. I can soften any parts I want to. I can create a little bit of texture on there if I want, etc. Last move, I want to clean my bat, because here at school what we do, we store our work with a clean bat. We then get a dirty finger, just kind of dip it in there in the trough. I put my initials clearly and my period number. Make sure that's clearly on the bat. It does no good to have a dirty bat and then just write that on there. Make sure you always clean your bat and then put your initials on there. The last thing I need to do is cut this thing. I should have done that first, but we'll do it now, or before putting my name on it. Wire. Wrap that wire tool around your fingers in a way where you can then put your thumbs on top of the wire, pulling it across the bat, cutting. Clean up my name. See, I'll do that one more time. I want to just show you. Clean up my name, and then this one is done. And this is ready for storage. So there's a basic cylinder form, or a tumbler. There you have it.